Hurt, betrayed, and pissed. Thought I was living a Disney fairy tale. Turns out to be a grim version. Sorry in advance, this is long. In high school, dated my first love for 3 years. We'll call him Brad. We break up because I joined the military and left at age 17. After asking his parents for permission for him to come with and got a no. We live our separate adult lives. I retire from the military. While helping his mom put in an extractor, he finds a box with all the letters and mementos from our time together. He finds me via social media. He couldn't remember how to spell my last name as it's different than how it sounds. We reconnect, start talking again, and all the old feelings resurface 20+ years later. We're living in different states, but decide to give it a go. I must say we moved very fast, but given our history and age, at the time I didn't feel it was fast or forced in any way. It felt natural and right at the time. We get engaged within 3 months. By month 8, I pick up and move to his state because I had the more flexible life, and he has a teenage daughter. We get married by month 11. Everything feels amazing. Everyone we tell the story to is amazing, talking about how beautiful of a love story it is, how we were meant to be, blah blah blah. Then less than 2 months into being married, I had a gut feeling something was off. He's always on his phone, being secretive. Something was off. One night at a bar, he hands his phone to me to hold while he plays pool. Throughout the night, I got outside for a cigarette occasionally. One time, I bumped my pocket and felt something. I had completely forgotten I had his phone. Something was screaming at me to look. So I did. He always said I could anytime I wanted, as I always showed him the same, and he had gone through my phone in the past with nothing found. Lo and behold, I find the text messages to a woman we'll call Stacy. My stomach dropped. He was sneaking to message her at night as I showered to get ready for bed. Was bringing her coffees to work. Wanting to get together for drinks. All the usual hurtful crap. Then I look further. He follows her on Instagram and Facebook. He's wow face emoji ing her photos. And getting a you like nice or beautiful out of him is like pulling teeth with a rusty, broken set of pliers. I would like to say I handled it like a mature, dignified adult, but I didn't. I confronted him at the bar. He refused to admit who she was. I called her and asked her what was going on. She said they're just friends, etc. So I had his brother take me home. I had to wait for his brother to close his tab. Brad rushes out and flies home. Manages to delete all the messages, delete her contact, and unfriend her on Facebook. He apologized profusely, begged forgiveness, promised complete honesty, etc. I fell for it. I messaged the girl, apologized for coming at her the way I did. She assured me their relationship was just professional and friendly, and that she was keeping her distance from now on. Oh, I failed to mention, they work in the same building, but in different areas. He assured me ties were cut. Fast forward, we are now on month 10 of being married. Things have been off lately. We barely have S**X, maybe 1 or 2 times a month, despite attempts by me, and I never say no when he wants because who knows when I'll get it again. I do basically everything at home, pay the majority of the bills. I make more money than him. Most of the cleaning, all the laundry, most of the care for his daughter when we have her on his weekend, most of the cooking, making his lunches/coffee every day for work, etc. I do all the meal planning and basically all the other life planning for our little family. Not to mention, I work anywhere from 40 to 48 hours in a very physical job and get home about 2 to 3 hours after him. He gripes about having to take the dogs out, and when I get home, it's all my responsibility. I had the dogs prior to us being together. Not to mention basically all the planning for his daughter's quince, as well as paying for half of it. So yesterday was supposedly his work's end of school year get together at a bar and grill. I forgot to mention he created a rule where we wouldn't go to a bar without the other when we first started dating again. I didn't care because I don't go to bars often. He said he wasn't going. I always text him when leaving work to let him know as I have a 30-minute drive home. He said, "Okay, my love, you soon." Instead of his usual drive safe, he loves me. I get home and he's not there. I call to ask where he is, and he says at his brother's. He gets home completely drunk, words slurring, reeking of beer. He said his brother had a vacation day, so he want to hang out with him. Usually he'll tell me if he plans on stopping instead of going straight home, and spends as much time on Snapchat as he does interacting with his brother, and he usually posts pics of his beer and drinking with his brother, but nothing. So I call his brother because my gut is screaming. I asked his brother for a favor, helping find a pic of his dad and Brad to help Brad's daughter with her Father's Day gift for him. 100% true and necessary. He said he would check when he gets home, as he just left 10 minutes ago. He usually works 3 to 11 p.m. Something is telling me to dig deeper. I check our phone records as it's in my name and I pay the bill. He called his brother right after we get off the phone. Why would you need to call your brother right after you supposedly left his house? So I asked him if he was really there. Affirmative. I said, you're sure? Affirmative. So I let it go. We go to sleep. He passes right out. He is drunk after all. While I lay there, mind racing and tossing and turning. Finally, I decide I'm going to check his phone, his work phone. Something was telling me to look. I start looking. Nothing suspicious on phone calls or texts. Then I decide to look at his deleted texts. Jackpot. One set of messages with the name of a guy. We'll say it was Bob from Grounds. I look at the messages. One incoming 20 minutes before he got off work, asking if they were going. The rest from him, asking if he made it home. Is he okay? Have a good night and they'll talk tomorrow. Buenas noches, Spanish for good night. And te quiero mucho, Spanish for I love you a lot, basically. Blood is boiling, heart racing, hands shaking. I write down the phone number for Bob from Grounds. Then I go through his email. Emails to Stacy supposedly 2 weeks after he stopped talking to her, saying hello and asking if they were going to eat them in her room. Not sure what them is referring to. That's all I could find on his work phone. I decide to do a search on the Bob phone number. Can you guess who it came up as? Stacy. Then I go get his personal phone and go through that. Find nothing. Get the great idea to check his bank records. $280 cash pulled out at the bar/grill he supposedly wasn't at. Either he was paying for drinks for everyone from work, or they went and have a lovely dinner and drinks together. Not sure which it is. I look further back. Lots of times I packed lunch he ate out. When I was out of town taking care of my property in my home state, he ate out lunch and dinner. And not at the cost for one person, nor did he mention any of these times he went out to eat. While I'm looking through the bank records, he wakes up, comes out to the living room and asks what I'm doing. I respond with, seeing how far your betray goes. He said, what? So I repeated myself. I again ask him where he was today because I know it wasn't at his brother's. He avoids, deflects, asks a question with a question. I tell him I already know the truth and am giving him an opportunity to speak the truth on his own. He refused, so I say okay. I'm out. Packing a quick bag with minimal clothes, pack my dog's stuff, load the car and my dogs. Mind you, I have one friend local, 2 sisters 4 hours away, and it's 1 in the morning on a Wednesday, well, technically Thursday morning at this point. So I call his brother and ask to crash there just for the night. He agrees to let me. Tells me the truth. Yes, Brad called and asked him to lie, and yes, he knows he's still talking with Stacy, but remains true and doesn't give me any other details, and I don't press him as it's not his responsibility, nor do I want to put him in the middle. So I'm having a few beers with his brother. 3:30 in the morning rolls around. Brad shows up, demanding me to go home. I don't. Tell him he can either stay at the apartment or his brother's, but I will not be staying wherever he is. He leaves. I sleep about an hour, wake up, load up the dogs again, and head to the apartment after I'm sure he's left for work. Pack some more of my stuff and necessities and hit the road at 7:30 this morning. I made it to my sister's by 11:30 and am spending time with loving people who always have my back and love endlessly. Minus him asking where I was going, I haven't heard from him since I told him I was staying with my sister for the weekend, to give him time to figure out what he wants and to decide if he's going to tell me the truth. Now I'm trying to figure out what to do next. What I want to do next. What steps to take. How I'm feeling. I feel so lost, hurt, betrayed, mad, embarrassed, all the worst feelings. And now to the next story, Story 2. Healing is a journey without a set deadline. I'm in a better headspace now than I was back then. The 4-year anniversary of D-Day is coming, and always like to reflect on my strengths and accomplishments that I have gained during this healing journey. My 40F, WH, 42M came up with the idea of an open relationship. I want to preface this with the fact that we have 2 special needs kids that rely heavily on me, although I work a full-time job. I agreed because I was not in the best mental state. I was exhausted at my high-stress job and trying to navigate our children's needs, as well as trying to maintain friendships and being present in my marriage. I barely had time to really reflect on what I really wanted. In 2018, we went to a destination wedding without our kids. I felt it was the perfect time to reconnect and enjoy the mini vacation. Little did I know I would feel the most alone than I've ever felt in my life. My WH barely spent time with me, and we only had S**X1X the whole trip, and it felt like he wasn't into it. He asked me, since we were still open, if one of the bridesmaids agreed if I was cool with him and her having S**X. I hesitantly agreed. Bad decision on my end. Well, they had S**X. The rest of our initial vacation went on like it didn't happen. In my mind, I figured it was bad, and he didn't want to talk too much about it as he usually talks to me afterwards. When we get back to reality, I tell him how I felt lonely during the trip, and he plays it off like I did that to myself. I told him I'm shutting down the open marriage right then and there because I was not comfortable anymore. Speed up to later that year, and the bridesmaid is buying him gifts for Christmas and his birthday. I told him that was a bit creepy, and he reminded me that we were all friends now, and that was just something this chick does. Then I see on our bank statement that he bought her a Christmas gift. I asked him, and he said he didn't want to be rude. I told him again that I was uncomfortable, and he said nothing was going on since she lived over 1,000 miles away. Well, then the pandemic hit, and all hell broke out with my mental health. Both my kids and I were at home, not since schools and daycare were closed. I was also working from home during this time, but working about 80-hour weeks, plus helping with homework, cleaning the house, and making all meals. During this time, my WH's podcast was doing great, and besides his regular 9 to 5, he was gone most nights at the studio. When I say a cheater will get caught eventually, I really mean it. The truth always comes to light no matter how long it stays in the darkness. Long story, but I eventually going through his old phone and found 2 years worth of texting between the bridesmaid and my WH. There were a lot of I love yous and I miss yous they were both sending to each other, along with plans to meet up and have secret dinners, including a planned boys trip down south near the city she lived in. During this part of D-Week, things only get worse. I also found out we was meeting another chick that slid into his DMs from the podcast at a random hotel she paid for, and they were both talking about their meet upstairs and making plans for their meetups. I also found text between Ham and his buddies about him bragging to them and them congratulating him, and also of him complaining to this chick, as well as his buddies about him not wanting to try with me anymore. During this time, I had no clue who this second chick was and trying to do some digging. Turns out my WH's friends caught wind that I was looking into this other chick, and he called me saying we needed to talk when he got home later that evening. At this time, I felt this odd calm wash and covery body. It was my nervous system trying to protect itself. I told myself to not make any rash decisions, and whatever my decision was, that it would also affect my kids too. We talked it out. I cried and told him how degrading and humiliated I felt, and that he completely disrespected me, and how he completely destroyed our marriage and any respect or trust one had with him. I told him that I was not making any rushed decision on our relationship because, unlike him, I actually think of the consequences my decisions have on others. I told him I need time to heal before I decide on anything. After I calmed down, I told him to call both of these women in my presence with speakerphone on and tell them whatever was happening that it was not going to continue. He called the long-distance woman first and told her they were done and he was blocking her from all socials as well as blocking her phone number, and he told her he was a liar and a cheater, what I told him to tell her verbatim. He then calls the hotel chick and tells her the same thing. Apparently hotel chick was at her wedding anniversary dinner with her husband, so that made it all the better. I love that for them both. I was still going through his phone that week and found yet another chick he cheated with. Please keep in mind that I closed the whole open marriage 2 years prior to D-Week. I called him while he was at work because at this point in my head those D papers were getting sorted and ready to be printed. I asked him if there were any women besides the 2 I found out about, and he admitted to the 3rd chick and that they only met up once earlier that year. At this point I was completely numb. I didn't know what to do anymore. I completely cut myself out of life surrounding my and saved in my head. At this point, my only concern was my job and my kids. I barely ate, barely slept. I stopped social media and talking to everyone. I didn't even want to hear my voice. I could only listen to music. The first words I spoke to my spouse was later on that next week, and I made him come with me to the doctor to get tested for STDs. The look on his face was a sense of shock, like he didn't think about that, and that MOT only did he mess me up mentally, but he put my physical health in jeopardy. When everything came back negative, he was so relieved, and all I felt was numbness. If you have read through all this, I thank you. We are still together. We've been married for almost 20 years now. I am an IC and have been doing well.